a professor in the building.
Oh, hello.
A professor in the building. And we're going to talk about very many interesting things and conversation. Of course, the Spice Drive is known for unfiltered conversations, and we welcome Dr. Christina Hicks, a Kenyan-British professor from Lancaster University, Oceana board member. Title.
That's a big one.
Yeah?
And you know, when you're talking to a professor, you better get everything right.
You know, I'm checking my stuff and stats.
Yes.
Karibu professor, do you know a bit of Swahili?
Najua kidogo. Najaribu.
I've seen Kenyan British.
My Kenyan name is Chemtai.
Chemutai.
Oh.
Okay.
Chemtai. Very interesting.
Who gave you the name Chemutai?
My mother.
It's your mom.
Yeah.
Okay. Is your mom from Rift Valley?
Yes.
From Rift Valley.
Near Kitale.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
Towards those areas.
Okay. Chamge?
Missing?
Aha.
Welcome to the show. Of course, we want to talk about Oceania and what you guys are doing in the conservation and marine and coastal communities, so maybe, and fisheries. So the first question I would ask is, people do not know, our listeners probably, most of them have never heard of Oceania.
A lot of people don't know about Oceania.
Yeah, so how did it come about? What is it all about for a person who really does not know anything about this? And why is the conference in Africa for the first time?
Yeah. So Oceana, from the name, is one of the it's the largest ocean-based NGO in the world, and it formed in early 2000s, and they focus on tackling ocean issues, on rebuilding critical habitats, on addressing overfishing, and supporting fisheries so that fisheries can support human nutrition as well, livelihoods, food security, and dignified lives.
So if you say fisheries, what about marine life apart from fishery?
Yes, very much marine life. So the habitats, the coral reef environments, the deep water environments, the seagrass, the mangroves, everything to do with the ocean environment that comes under pressure from pollutants, from large corporate entities over-exploiting the fish stocks, from climate change as well, increasingly.
So how do you sensitize then about marine pollution?
So marine pollution is a global problem. Yeah. Every country in the world faces it because our oceans connect every country around the world. So probably your listeners will have heard a lot about plastic pollution. And I know Kenya has done some great work in sensitizing the public about plastic pollution, in banning plastic bags. Was it more than 10 years ago?
10 years ago.
Yeah, in cleaning up our beaches. So I'm sure your audience is very aware of the plastic pollution, and a lot of that makes its way eventually into the oceans. But there are other sources of pollution as well that the oceans experience. So runoff from agriculture and factories, which often site themselves on coastlines because of the cooling potential of the ocean waters. Can, if they're not properly regulated, be discharging into the oceans as well, resulting in polluting the waters and creating harmful algal blooms that can create skin lesions. And some of those factories also pollute the air. And in West Africa, we're seeing some problems, particularly with some of the fish meal and fish oil factories along that coastline. But I don't think we have that problem here in Kenya.
So when we say that there's a lot of Nairobi River, for example, is notorious for
a lot of pollution.
And it ends up in Tana River, ends up in the coastal regions.
And ends up in the ocean.
Yeah. So if someone, for example, and we're talking about food security, because a lot of the fish in the water probably will have a lot of impact from this pollution and can transmit some form of diseases to people. So how is the NGO sensitizing and making sure that Kenyans and people in the world understand the importance of Oceana?
So plastic pollution is one of the main campaigns that Oceana runs, and they've run campaigns challenging some of the major corporations that are responsible for plastic pollution. For example, Coca-Cola and McDonald's. So Oceana's campaigns identify the issues, and then they work with the actors that are responsible for the issues, but also responsible for legislating those issues. They raise awareness, and then they shift ocean policies and practices.
So how are we protecting, for example, the coral reefs from this pollution?
So when it comes to coral reefs and fisheries more generally, so pollution is one problem, but the coral reefs are particularly threatened or exposed to the impacts of climate change. So climate change is a bigger problem for coral reefs than plastic pollution. And when it comes to the fish that live in the reefs, that are out in the oceans, that we depend on for our food and nutrition security, it's really the overfishing that happens. So it's these three areas, or these three pressures on our oceans. So plastic, yes, but the areas I work more on, and climate change, and then overfishing. And much more of my work is focused on the overfishing aspect of the threats on our oceans.
So, for example, recently the Kenyan government said fish from Lake Nakuru is unfit for human consumption.
Naivasha too.
I see a big problem in Lake Victoria, because I think at one time there'll be overfishing.
Yeah.
Apart from Oceana looking at the Mombasa region, Kilifi and areas, because I think that's the biggest area, catchment area, are you looking into our local lakes, Turkana and the rest as well?
Well, Oceana focuses more on ocean issues. But when it comes to fisheries, and a large part of my work and Oceana's work is around the nutritional benefits that we get from fish. So then that includes all fish. And if you look at Africa in particular, probably, roughly half of our catch comes from the oceans, and the other half comes from our lakes and rivers. So if we're thinking about fisheries and we're thinking about the importance of fish for our diets, we can't not think about the lakes. In fact, that's a real critical resource for us, particularly in East Africa area.
So if we are saying that there's a bit of overfishing, the people who are around the fishing, apart from men, are women. How are we incorporating women so that they can spread the agenda and teach the communities about this Oceana?
Yeah. So it's really nice that you asked that question, because probably if you go back 10 years ago, when it comes to policy and research and people are talking about fisheries, the focus is exclusively on men. And men are really important. They have a very important role to play in fishing, but they're the ones who go out fishing. And they can't, or the fishing economy won't survive without the relationship between the men and the women. So the women often are involved in processing the fish and drying the fish and selling it in the market. So that kind of symbiotic relationship, I think, between the role that men play and the role that women play is really important. And it's really important that when we develop policies and when we think about changes that need to happen in the fisheries, we're thinking about the roles that men do, but we're also very much thinking about the role that women do. Because both men and women, and particularly I think it's these small-scale fishers that really are the heart of the solution to governing or to managing our lakes and waters more sustainably, to ensure that the benefits can continue to reach households across the whole of Africa.
One of the biggest problems in fishing is the big trawlers from developed countries coming to African waters or maybe Kenyan waters. For example, the tunas around the Lake Indian Ocean. There's a lot of tuna in the Kenyan coast, and they come and overfish. What is the policy saying, for example, in protecting the lesser developed countries from overfishing, from the Japans of this world, the Chinese, because they do massive fishing, and in international waters, and also in the neighboring countries' waters.
Yeah. So that's a real critical issue that Oceana addresses and that I also look at in my work. And there's two areas or two avenues to addressing this problem. The first one is one of the campaigns, or one of the issues that's being highlighted at the Our Oceans conference that's in Mombasa, starting this next week, is to try and ensure that there's the area between the shore and a certain distance from the coastline is protected for the small-scale fishers. So for the fishers from different African nations to fish within that area and be certain that the industrial vessels are not going to come into their fishing area. So those are called preferential access areas. The second issue, and the more complex one, is then, so the problem with industrial fishing and foreign fishing is it's very opaque. So we have developed systems where it's very easy for vessel ownership to change overnight. We have systems where a vessel can be registered under the name of a Kenyan or somebody from Senegal, for example, but actually the person that owns that vessel is living somewhere else in Spain or elsewhere. And they're the ones who are deciding how much fish is caught, where they go, but also they're the ones that are benefiting. And because we have these very opaque systems, we don't know who's fishing where. We don't know how much they're fishing. And so then it's really difficult to regulate them and to control them. One initiative that Oceana was involved in, starting in 2016, is they developed something called Global Fishing Watch. And this was a collaboration between Oceana, an organization called Sky Truth, and Google. And what they set out to do was try and, drawing on technology, working with local governments on AI monitoring systems, so essentially sort of GPS satellite tracking, see if they could map and track industrial vessels. And so that's had some real great successes. And currently it's about 1/3 of industrial vessels are being tracked through those systems. So we've had some successes, but we need to go further.
Yeah, we need, because what is the biggest problem is that when you talk about blue economy and you talk about development of marine and sustainability, the fish stocks must remain at a level where they can sustain growth and also earn you income as a country. But the biggest problem I have, and what we've had for a very long time, is that the developed countries have always overfished in the areas they're not supposed to fish. They have also been known to follow fish in protected species of fish, which are not supposed to be taken out for breeding. So how do we make sure that some species are protected and we do not end up eliminating a whole system?
So I think we need to develop these better, or we need better systems of monitoring, so we can actually see who's fishing, where they're fishing, and how long they're fishing. We then also need a way of understanding who that fishing vessel is. Not just that there's a fishing vessel there, but who owns it and who controls it. And so some of the ideas that Oceana is working on is developing these, is making these beneficial ownership systems transparent. So every country should have a registry of beneficial owners, so we know not just who the registered owner is, but who the ultimate benefit of those fishing vessels is going to be.
Are those systems working, like when it comes to government policy?
Well, that's what we're pushing for, those systems to be put in place. So there's a coalition called the Coalition for Fisheries Transparency, and they are working together with a number of different organisations, the Environmental Justice Foundation, Oceana, and what they're really trying to push is for governments to sign up to these commitments and make these lists,
Yeah.
accessible, available, and transparent. So those are this conference that's happening next week. Part of the idea is to identify what are the things that we need to do as a country, but collectively across the globe, and can we agree to work together to make certain things happen?
Yeah, because we're talking about a lot of water here. We're talking about 71% of the whole world.
Yeah.
And, there are some countries that are probably unstable. What happens there? And fishing cannot be controlled. What happens there
Yeah.
in such situations?
Yeah. So where we have countries that, often where we have countries that are politically unstable, in fact, fishing pressure decreases. So, for example, off the Somali coastline,
Somalia.
we've recently seen an increase in incidents of piracy again.
Yeah.
And it's not a solution at all. But those countries and the instability in those areas need to be addressed for other reasons. But if the rest of the world can agree, or the majority of the world can agree on certain commitments, then there's a greater pressure put on those countries that are not agreeing, and those countries that are currently in conflict situations or lack the capacity to monitor and enforce these rules, when they're in a better position, are more likely to join what the global consensus is.
Okay.
So I think that's really the kind of the idea behind these global conferences, is to say, can we shift the majority? Can we get a consensus? And with that momentum, then bring the rest of the world with us.
So when we were talking about places like Nairobi River, and it's the way it ends up to the ocean, how do we control pollution? Because I think that should be the biggest thing, the biggest problem, probably. I don't know if that's the biggest problem. You can probably tell us. Because how does pollution really affect marine biodiversity?
Yeah. I don't work a lot on pollution. But from my experience, pollution is one of those problems that I think we can fix it, because I think we fix it by going to the source.
Yes.
So we go to the producers who are producing the products that are ending out in our waterways. And if we can stop it there, then that stops the flow.
That's a role of the government?
Role of governments, but also commitments by the companies themselves. I think a lot of them start to realize that
because
actually...
a lot of them are ignorant.
I don't know if... Are they ignorant still?
Yeah, they just want to dump there, and they say, we don't care, it's out.
I think they probably... I don't think they're ignorant. I think they dump there because it's the cheapest option available to them. And they are not being held accountable for those actions. So
we need to have stringent measures to do that.
I think we need measures. We need accountability, and I think we need the community response to in the UK. Currently, there's a court case being taken about a polluted river. So I think we need to come at it from multiple directions. But both the government, but also community, the power of the people, I think.
Thank you very much, Daktari. You know, in Swahili we say Daktari.
Professor.
We're going for a short break because we're going for news. We'll be back. Of course, we'll discuss what's the conference is in hold for us and what are we going to discuss. And in the second part of this show, ladies and gentlemen, we are just having Daktari telling us what's happening in the beautiful world of Oceania. And of course, with my good friend, Michaela Mangura in the building. So let's go for news. Keep listening. Today we are discussing something very important, something very critical to the livelihood of Kenyans and to the world. Of course, we're talking about Oceana, and we're talking about food security as well. And of course, we have Professor.
Yes. Daktari.
Professor, my friend.
Daktari. Prof.
Yeah, you know, he's just a prof.
Yeah, prof.
Prof Hicks, in short.
Actually, let me just ask you a quick one. How did you study Oceania?
So when when I was young,
Yeah.
I loved going to the sea.
Wow.
But when I went to university, I didn't believe that could be a real job. And after I finished my first degree, which was in environmental chemistry. So I was always interested in the environment and in sustainability issues. I did an internship with two scientists here in Kenya, so Dr. Nyawira Muthaiga and Dr. Tim McClanahan down in Mombasa. And I had a great time, and I learned so much, and I learned about the coral reefs. I learned about the challenges they were facing, and also the management that we're putting in place to try and save the coral reefs. And after I went back to continue my studies in the UK, I got a job in a factory in the UK, and I thought, this isn't what I want. So I wrote back to Dr. Tim and Dr. Nyawira, and I said, what do I do to have a job like yours? So he recommended a degree at a university, which was tropical coastal management. And then after that, I did my PhD, which was in Australia, at the ARC Centre of Excellence for Coral Reef Studies. So my focus was always on coral reefs, but I became more and more interested in the human side, because I started realizing that as much as science can tell us what we need to do, unless we understand how people behave, what motivates them to do what their needs are, we're never going to be able to succeed in the initiatives, the governance initiatives, the sustainability initiatives that we want and that we need.
Very interesting, because on your bio, there's something very interesting here, that your work is far-reaching and covers fisheries governance, conservation, food justice, and nutrition. Let's talk about food justice. What is food justice?
Yes. So I mean, this is an area I've become more and more interested in.
Yes.
Through my career. And it intersects with a lot of the issues that we were talking about earlier when you were talking about the foreign vessels catching our fish. And food justice, or the work that I do around food justice. So I did this paper in 2019, and what I wanted to know was whether there's enough nutrients in the oceans to support the coastal communities that live there. Because from working in Mombasa, I had this real belief that actually our oceans should be able to support at least the fishing communities with dignity and in a sustainable way. So I did this global analysis, and I compiled all the information we have on the nutrient content of fish. I brought in the data that tells us how much is being fished, and then I looked at the nutrient gaps. So if you then look at the coastal community, so I looked at what was in the water that we're already pulling out of the water, and then I looked at the difference between what people are eating and what they should be eating in terms of their nutrition. And I found that across many countries in Africa, we have these key nutrient gaps, which means we're not getting enough calcium, iron, omega-3, these micronutrients. But if you look at what's being caught in our waters, there's enough being caught in our waters. It's just not getting to the populations that need it. So my work around food justice is really trying to understand, why is it this inequity exists? Because it doesn't have to exist. It's not a lack of nutrients. It's the systems and the structures that move nutrients around the world from where they're most needed to where people are most able to pay for them.
And just to add on to that, now, there's also the issue you're talking about nutrition, and you're talking about fish meal and fish oil.
Yes.
How are they interrelated with what you've just spoken about?
Yeah, very closely so. So recently I've been doing a lot of work in West Africa, so Senegal, the Gambia, Sierra Leone also, and Mauritania. And in the coastal waters of those countries, you have these upwellings. So the fisheries are really productive. So West Africa catches huge amounts of fish. But this, and a lot of them are what we call small pelagic fish. So they're like sardines, a bit like our omena that we have in the lakes, but they're bigger. And the characteristic of these small fish is they're really nutritious. So they have a really high concentration of micronutrients that our bodies need, as well as omega-3s that you can only get in fish. So they're really critical for children's development, for women who are pregnant or breastfeeding, and just for growth in general. But the aquaculture industry, they're also used in aquaculture. They're used particularly in salmon aquaculture because those nutritious fish are not just nutritious for us, but they're also nutritious for other fish that eat fish. And if you feed fish, particularly salmon, something called fish oil, which is what they extract out of those small pelagic fish, they eat more. So those fish grow faster. So it's a really vital ingredient in the aquaculture industry, but often an industry that's serving a very different market and a different population.
Then someone would be keen to ask, are there any nutritional deficiencies in aquatic animals like fish for the people who are consuming?
Yeah, so the reason why I focus a lot now on micronutrients and fish and nutrition is you can think of fish as a bit of a superfood. So it has really high concentration of things that we call micronutrients. And those are things that we need to consume, but we only need a small amount of them. But if we don't have enough micronutrients, then it impacts physical and cognitive development. It leads to stunting. So fish is able to plug a really important gap in our diets. You can also get these micronutrients from other foods like animal source foods. But in many coastal countries, fishes, and particularly these small pelagic fish, if you look at the price of omena, it's really cheap.
Very cheap.
And it can be dried and it can be transported. So it has the potential to really kind of boost children's growth, make us really healthy, but it's not living up to that potential because of these global dynamics.
Very interesting, because now it begs the question: how are Africans prepared for the food systems, especially the marine communities? Because the food system storage is a problem.
Yeah.
That's the number one problem.
You can fish today as a small scale farmer or fisherman or fisherwoman if they are raised, but for you to keep that fish fresh without going bad, unless you smoke it or you dry it, and some people don't have the skill and ability and know-how. So most of the catch would go to waste, because sometimes you spend too much time in the water before you bring them to the shore. So how are we protecting the food systems in this Oceana way of sensitization?
So maybe the first thing I'll say is that so I think there has been for a long time the practice of drying fish, particularly fish that come in really large schools. So if you've got sardines coming through, or sometimes some schooling fish, or spawning fish. And so the practice has been, when those really large catches come in, to dry them. And so we've had traditional drying methods, either in the sun or, like you say, smoking. And those are really effective all across Africa. And it's cheap to dry. The fish themselves are cheap because they come in such high abundances. And to transport it is cheap because you don't need to refrigerate it. So that practice that's often or mostly done by women of drying the fish and then transporting it it's really critical that we can protect those systems. A lot of the fish that's consumed, in fact, we did a study and we had a look at what was being consumed in terms of fish across Africa, and dried fish is consumed more often than fresh fish. But the fresh fish also, serves a really important market, particularly close to the shore. But you're right, it does need to be eaten that day or the next day, which is why it should be able to support local food systems. So we can distribute the dried fish to where
far and wide.
Yeah. And then we can consume the fresh fish locally. But with the development of, and we can develop, we can invest in cold storage so the fish can be kept for longer. So there are many ways, and there are drying techniques that dry the fish even better. Very simple drying ovens that enable the women to reduce the waste and loss, so then get more money because they're not losing the fish, but still distribute it inland. So there's a lot of kind of programs and interventions that can happen to reduce the loss along the supply chain, but whilst maintaining those territorial markets that are critical to our food systems in Africa.
What about processed and imported kind of fish?
Yeah. So there's a market for that. One of the things that you tend to find, particularly within Africa, is the dried fish is accessible to even the poorest households. So that's why it's really critical to protect those systems. And we do, across Africa, we import a lot of fresh fish and frozen fish. But then that's going to a slightly different consumer because you will have to buy it somewhere where there is a cold storage. So then the price will be a little bit higher.
Yeah.
So it's still important, but it's getting to a different segment of society.
Have you ever done a paper on the number of fish in Kenyan coast? The tuna business. I love tuna because it's a contest between
Oh, no, he should
Kenya.
tell you he loves fish, this one.
Oh.
Even today it's boiled fish.
He's always
I eat fish
eating
all the
fish.
time.
That's good. Yeah,
it's my favorite food.
Yeah.
Fish. It's really good for you because it has these micronutrients, but it's also good for you because you can get most of those micronutrients in meat. But if you eat too much red meat, you get other problems, other dietary problems.
Okay.
But fish doesn't have those problems.
It's okay.
I always eat even today. My lunch was
Good.
fresh fish from Lake Victoria.
Boiled.
That's why you're sharp.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Boiled.
It does help. people.
No fat.
Nothing. Just water.
I come
boil
from
it.
the fishing community, so I understand the type of fish. But also, in the lake, there's a phenomenon happening. I don't know whether in the river oceans are like lakes right now. Lake Victoria, there's a reemergence of the older stocks of fish which had disappeared.
Yes.
So the other day, I was shocked that if you go to the market, we find if you come from that area, people knew there's some kind of fish we used to eat when we were kids. And they disappeared because of introduction of Nile perch.
Yeah.
Because Nile perch is the only fish which eats other fish in the lake.
Yeah.
And we really protested. Some of us, we protest because we didn't want Nile perch in the lake.
Yeah.
We want tilapia and the rest. Fish which does not eat other fish.
Yes.
But anyway, Nile perch came, ate most of the fish, but now the stock has come up again. I don't know if you guys do the studied, Professor, you understand what happens when a fish which you think were extinct all of a sudden come back.
Yeah. I haven't studied this area, but I have heard about the more indigenous tilapia coming back.
They're back, yes.
And so I've heard that story, and so that's great news. But with all fisheries, if we can develop more, if we can effectively manage them, then if the whether it's the whatever the pressure is that's causing the fish populations to be depressed, so whether that's too many fishermen, whether it's that pollution, whether it's too much of a predator, when that pressure is released, then we always see fish populations bouncing back. So fish is, it is a renewable resource, and it's a wonderful resource for us to be able to benefit from.
Oh, nice, very interesting. So when you talk about the politics and finance of investment in fisheries and food systems, what do you really look into when you're looking into nutrition and food security?
Yeah, so this is the question. It's coming back to who is it
Yes.
that's doing the activities at sea. Who owns the vessels? Who makes the decisions about what's caught, where it's fished, where it's sold? What are the incentives, perhaps? What are the incentives that some governments are putting in place to attract foreign investment, maybe in the form of factories or in the form of foreign vessels that generate very necessary foreign revenue, but maybe undermining the best interests of local communities. So it's really trying to uncover or make this area that's very opaque. So we don't really see who's financing our fisheries. So it's trying to really expose that and try and understand who's financing our fisheries, so that if we're going to put policies in or restrictions in, we can go to the source. We don't have to penalise the fisher who is likely just working on either the small scale ones or even the industrial ones who are just labourers on the vessels. We can actually target the source of the driver of overfishing.
So that begs the question. Now, if this conference, which is coming next week, what is a policy what are the policy database you're going to look for, and what will be the outcome of it?
Yeah. So the first one linked to that really is this push to try and make the beneficial ownership more transparent, so that across the board we know who's fishing, we know how much they're fishing, and we know who's controlling that. So really it's that pushing for transparency in terms of the ownership structures of the activities at sea, but also the factories, and linking that to accountability. So it's not enough that we just know who's fishing and who owns it. We then have to put in the regulations in place to control that, to monitor that, to be able to respond to maybe a sudden uptick in how much fish is being taken out of the waters.
So is the government part of this conference? Do you think government will be upbeat and join you guys in trying to rationalize the marine conservation and also food security?
I think so. I think part of the challenge when it comes to maybe ocean issues is they haven't been at the top of the agenda. They haven't been a priority. So when the governments are trying to make decisions between, around trade, perhaps to try and attract foreign investment because it's necessary, they're not thinking about the impact that perhaps licensing this one factory will have on the marine environments or the adjacent coastal communities. So conferences like this help put those pieces together and put it on the same platform so that governments can make informed decisions. And I think there is a lot of chatter, there's a lot of noise. I think there's an appetite to make these beneficial ownership lists transparent. It might take a bit of time to get there fully, but I feel like we're definitely pushing in that direction. I think the other area that there's been traction on is the preferential access zones, so protecting the inland coastlines for the small-scale fishers. I think there's movement in that space. There's a lot of movement in protecting critical habitats, so protecting the coral reefs, protecting the seagrass beds, because we have signed up to commitments like the 30 by 30 commitment to do that, but also because communities themselves are beginning to put these initiatives in place. So along our coastline in Kenya, in 2012, our government devolved governance down to local fishers. So that means that the government isn't the only entity that's responsible for management, but they have given some power to what they call the beach management units.
BMUs.
The BMUs, exactly.
Yeah.
And, it's now been over 10 years. Some communities have really thrived in that. Some communities have decided to put in what they call tengefus. So they've closed off areas, so no one fishes in there. And you're seeing the coral reefs and the fish in those areas beginning to rebound. So you have a lot of engaged governance and decision making happening. And And so I think within that context, it's really critical that the government also recognises the role that small-scale fishers and fishing communities have in making decisions about how those resources are governed.
Will the BMUs, will they give you the achievements as part of the presentation? Are they invited for the conference? Are they delivering a paper? And what is your paper about?
Yeah, so they're definitely, I know they will be at the conference. I've talked to a few BMU members just this last week, actually, and they will be definitely at the conference. There's one panel, there's one plenary session that the conference and the government has set aside that's explicitly about how do we empower community voices in ocean decision making. So there's a real kind of effort.
Involvement.
Yeah. I think the challenge is that it has to be meaningful. So it's not just enough to have a seat at the table. It's not just enough to invite a fisher along to these big meetings. They have to be heard, they have to be respected, they have to be able to bring things forward that maybe will challenge maybe will challenge the government. So I think that kind of meaningful participation is really important.
I agree 100%. And what's your paper all about in this?
So in fact, I'll be quite busy. So the first one I'm doing at the science conference is about the importance of diversity in small-scale fisheries. So one of the real strengths, particularly of small-scale fisheries, is that they're diverse, and that diversity manifests in different ways, and it has different benefits. So the fish, where you have a greater diversity of fish and you consume a greater diversity of fish, the nutrients that you intake are more nutritious and the other foods that you eat are more nutritious. So there's a real benefit in maintaining diversity on your plate. When you have more diverse fish out in the waters, you're likely to have a more resilient ecosystem because you've got different types of fish playing different types of roles. If you look at the livelihoods that we have along the coastline, where you have a greater diversity of gears going fishing and different roles in the communities, the pressure on the ecosystem tends to be less because it's spread out across different areas. And then also where you have a diversity of governance systems. So when we have, the government, they're really important, but we also recognize the customary forms of rules and norms and values that have always shaped how people interact with their environment. When we embrace that diversity of governance, we're more likely to succeed in protecting our oceans and supporting our food systems going forward.
Does climate change feature?
Yeah, so I won't be talking about climate change, but I'm the impacts of climate change. I think, we can't. We're living here in Kenya. We're aware almost every day of the impacts of climate change. I think the recent floods are a really stark reminder that climate change is really, really here, and we need to limit our emissions globally, and we need to build adaptive capacity. And climate change is also definitely impacting ecosystems. So coral reefs are some of the most vulnerable ecosystems to climate change. So they're often talked about as the canary in the coal mine. So what we see happening, or when we see the coral reefs being really impacted, we know other harms are going to follow.
I'd be interested to know about your time in Australia when you're how is their diet there? Because it's surrounded by water.
Yeah, Australia is quite a funny country. So it's a huge country, but it has a very small population, and it, like Kenya, it's got some really rich ecosystems. So they've got the largest continuous Great Barrier Reef in the world, so the Great Barrier Reef, and that's it's a coral reef ecosystem. They've got a huge diversity of fish, and if you go down to the coast and you look at what people are catching off the coral reef over a year, you're going to see tens, 20s, 30s, 40s, many different species are being caught. Maybe we kind of most often catch rabbitfish or parrotfish or snappers. But when you go to Australia, they only catch one type of fish.
Really?
So they're very, 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 very selective. And I think and that partly because they like, I think, often in many more westernized countries, I think their fish palate has changed. So I think these white fish are what people really like, and they've kind of lost the taste for really rich fishy flavors.
Oh, really?
And except for Spain and Portugal, I think they're a real, but I think maintaining that palate is really important because the different species of fish and some of the strongest species of fish, I know a lot of people don't like omena here.
Yes,
but it's really good for you.
Because your neighbors, all your neighbors, you'll know you're cooking omena.
Yeah. But if you like it, don't lose that flavor because it's a real benefit.
Okay.
Daktari, have you eaten omena before?
Have you eaten omena?
Now you're going to catch me out.
No, have you eaten omena, Daktari?
No, I've eaten sardines.
Yes.
But not omena. Yeah, I need
not
to.
Not these ones we have here.
I keep looking at them.
Sardines are different from omena.
There's some girls here who say they cannot eat omena because it looks like you're eating and killing it because its eyes are just looking at you.
Yeah.
Some of us who eat omena, we love it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, and it's called the silver what? It's the English name, silver something.
Yeah.
Omena.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you said you're presenting a paper, and of course, so we look out to what you're going to present during the conference. But also, my other question is, you said you've been doing this thing for the work for a very long time. Are there any challenges you faced when you're dealing with these communities around the coast, when you're trying to educate them? And what are those challenges, and how can you surmount them?
Yeah. So I think the first thing I'd say is what I've learned, particularly over the more recent years, is that there is a wealth of knowledge within these coastal communities. Their knowledge systems have developed through experience and through generations. So sometimes it's simple things like if you go to the fishermen along the coastline, they will know what time it is, they'll know the date, they'll know the season, just by looking out at the oceans, looking at the stars and looking at the moon. And, we can also, I can go on my phone and it's the same knowledge base that tells me the tides that come and go. But these communities have always known them.
They live there.
They live there, yeah. And so, so that's a system of their knowledge that is aligned with more kind of Western-based science. So I think it's really important that we don't overlook that knowledge base, because it would be a real shame if they lost that ability to tell the time, the seasons, the dates, to know when it was safe to go fishing, when it's time to go farming, and then they become more dependent on a mobile phone. Partly because that mobile phone costs money.
Yeah.
So it makes their fishing more expensive. There are also, within these communities, there've always been these rules around, they've been ways of controlling who's allowed to fish. So often this is linked to traditions, sometimes spiritual traditions, which people don't always like to talk about. But often they play the same role as modern management. They're about limiting the number of people who go fishing so that it reduces the impact on the fishery, or completely closing off areas to people from fishing. So I think there's a lot for us to learn from those communities, partly because it's also, if they're already doing it, then compliance is a lot easier. The challenges they face is because, life has become more expensive for everyone. So maybe 20 years ago, where their needs were, it wasn't really that expensive. You didn't have that many demands on what you needed to buy to support your household. Nowadays, they need to buy, engine for the fuel. If they've got an engine, they need to pay their school fees. If it comes to the cold storage thing, perhaps they want a cold storage. And they're very receptive to, doing new things and learning new knowledge. So I think perhaps the key challenge I'd say they face is access to resources, so financial resources, but also training. And training is the one that they really, really appreciate and benefit from.
Oh, really? So what about these guys who fish using mosquito net?
Yes. So I guess that's an example.
Yeah.
So where we have, traditionally, there would have been rules around who's allowed to go fishing.
Okay.
And the power would sit with the mzee, and he would grant access or not access. And if you weren't granted access, maybe because he didn't like the gear you were using, you would stick to that because you were feared the consequences. What would happen if you were cursed or whatever. So those systems existed. But then when we developed more, or when we introduced new forms of fisheries management, we didn't go in and say, okay, this stuff already exists, so let's reinforce that and add new layers. We just brought in this new system, which meant that the old rules broke down. So then the people who started coming in with more destructive gears, there was no reason for them not to fish in this area. And so then the pressure was put on the new rules imposed by the government to monitor it, to enforce it, and you have to constantly be there. Whereas if we'd drawn on the existing rules and norms, then the monitoring happens within the community. So I think it's that breaking down of trust and that breaking down of traditions that happened accidentally that meant compliance issues is a real challenge. And you do have people coming and using destructive gears and gears that people know they shouldn't be using, but who's there to stop them?
True. There has to be strict regulations.
So, either stricter regulations or building that community cohesion so that the community can reinforce it themselves. So if you fear, if you care about what I think, you're not going to do something that I'm going to disapprove. But if you don't care what I think anymore, you'll do whatever you want.
So, Dr. we are saying that traditional knowledge is key and important in food system management in Africa. And I agree, because partially if you go to Lake Victoria, there are families which are known to fish. Not everyone goes to fish. Number two, there's someone who will tell you when you go into fishing, what time you can get. There's an old man who will walk in and look at the lake and say, no one is going in this lake today. Without science. And if you disobey, there'll be some guys who will be dead in that ocean or that lake because he knows the tides and the time. It might look very cool, and he says, no, the sea is very angry. They talk like that. They tell you this. The sea is very angry, and you wonder what anger are you talking about. So how do you complement then this extreme knowledge, traditional knowledge with science, and how do we make people access to realize that African knowledge is as important as the social science we are dealing with right now?
So we do have examples of where, so firstly, I think, we need to recognize that these traditional sources of knowledge exist, and we need to learn more about them. And it's not saying that we need to stay in the past. It just means we need to maintain the relations and the trust, and we need to respect, because those traditions, they change, they evolve with time, with the arrival of Islam, with the arrival of, they all change through time. But it's about making sure that the people who make decisions about those rules are part of the process. I lost my train of thought.
You're saying it's about the traditional knowledge is part of the system and can complement the science.
And your question was, how do we make that.
Keep them, and of course, pass it, the knowledge to the people. Because you see, in the next 5 years, mobile phone will be the main source of information. With AI and everything, people will be Googling everything or ChatGPTing. Can I fish today? Yes, you can fish. Where can I fish today?
Everywhere.
It gives you 10 answers different times. So you get confused. But African knowledge will tell you this coral reef at this time is when it has a lot of a school of fish visiting at this time, because the water is warm, because there's cold current coming in, or warm current from the rivers.
So it goes back to that. It's simple, but it's complex. the idea that fishing communities and the Mzee, they have to have a voice. They have to have a meaningful seat at the table. They have to be allowed to rearrange the table as well. So it is about recognizing, it's about centering those experiences, and entering into partnerships. So the challenge of sustainably managing our oceans going forward doesn't sit with one person. It doesn't sit with the government. The government's really important. It sits with all of us. And we need to develop means of bringing people together, create forum for them to discuss ideas, to disagree, but to build that understanding and respect for each other's knowledge bases and their values. There are initiatives that are working in this space. So there's an initiative called Turning Tides that's really about trying to support customary marine tenure. So really trying to support those communities where these systems are strong and they exist. And it's trying to support those in having their voices heard and having their systems upheld.
Wow. Interesting. Are there any discoveries that have been really exciting for you when you're studying oceans?
Gosh, that's anything exciting. There's a lot of depressing discoveries. But I think probably my favorite discovery, what opened up a new avenue for me, was this, when I learnt about the importance of micronutrients to us, and I realized that there was this solution that was there all the time. We've been eating seafood before people even left the African continent. So our bodies have evolved to need seafood, but it's part of our culture, part of our humanity. And so I guess seeing that there's an opportunity, the system that's broken doesn't need to be broken. And the solution is lying there. We just need to piece that together. So I think, that was
great.
So, Daktari, I want us to close the conversation. If given another chance, would you still study what you've studied?
Because that's passion.
Definitely. I'm still studying. I haven't finished.
You have
I think the real nice thing about being in research is you never stop learning. So every day is a new thing. And you can ask questions that you really care about, that you think really matter, that people don't, that the answers are not yet decided on. So I'd recommend it to everyone.
The young people you actually encourage to study marine science?
Definitely, yeah. I think I'd encourage people to do what to follow their heart. If they believe about something, if they're passionate about something, so that's half the battle. I think if you're passionate, you'll work hard, opportunities will open up to you.
Okay. Interesting.
Very, very.
Any last words? How do we reach you if someone wants to read more about you?
I'm based in Lancaster University. I'm on the board of Oceana, so anyone can look me up. And am I on any social media? I'm on LinkedIn. That's the only one I've managed to be on.
That's a professor for you.
That's a professor for we didn't even expect you to be there. Professors and technology.
No.
because they see a lot of things and they say this is too much nonsense.
I don't want social. Too much social.
I want to think. But welcome.
Thank you very much.
Have you gone to Eldoret?
Yes. I have not on this trip, but my family's there.
Okay.
My brother's there.
Oh, nice. Did they talk to you in Cali?
Oh, not so much.
Give us
They can talk to me, but I won't hear them. So.
Oh, you understand.
Completely lost the tongue.
So we speak a side language, Sebe.
Sebe.
That's what.
Oh, Sebe is from Mount Elgon.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not so common.
It is.
I don't think it's that common.
It's common, but
common.
it's in Mount Elgon area.
Mount Elgon.
There are
It
Sebes.
was a very dangerous area, that place.
Because of that guy.
That guy who used to cut people's ears.
Matakwe.
Matakwe.
Anyway, it's interesting. It's I'm very pleased to host you this afternoon.
Thank you very much.
We really appreciate you. We wish that you have a good time, and of course, when you go back to the university, and when you're around, please come back again.
Yeah.
We unpack other issues. It's always good to talk to someone who really understands what marine conservation and food security is, and nutrition, of course.
I know
Such a brilliant mind.
Yeah, I know we're
Yeah.
going for a break. So are there more fish that humans have not found?
I'm sure, yes.
There's
yes.
so many more.
There's so much in the oceans we don't know.
So much,
Yeah, so we need all of the young scientists to come and discover our oceans.
Okay.
But thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for welcoming me.
Great.
All right. Of course, welcome again. Of course, I'm talking to Dr. Christina Chemtai Hicks, and of course, Oceana board, Kenyan British professor, and we're talking about matters that involve marine, the life, and everything else. Wonderful conversation. We're going for news when we come back. Keep listening.